Some stories remind us that truth cannot be hidden, no matter how small it seems. Tonight's tale comes from the timeless world of classic fairy tales, a story about honesty, sensitivity, and a test so simple, yet so powerful, that it changed a prince's destiny forever. If you enjoy magical stories, classic fairy tales, and timeless lessons, subscribe to the channel, turn on the notification bell, and support us with a like so you never miss a new story. Now, get comfortable, and let us begin the story of the Princess and the Pea. In a kingdom where the hills were always green and the rivers sang gentle lullabies, there ruled a wise old king and his even wiser queen. Their only son, Prince Elias, was everything a kingdom could hope for, tall and strong, with eyes the color of summer skies and a heart that cared deeply for every living creature. Yet he carried one quiet longing. He wished to marry a true princess, one whose nobility came not only from birth, but from an almost magical sensitivity to the world around her. For years he searched. He crossed stormy seas on tall ships with crimson sails, rode through misty forests where ancient oaks whispered secrets, and climbed marble steps into distant palaces. He met princesses of every kind, one who could recite poetry in 7 languages, another who tamed wild falcons with a single glance, a third whose laughter sounded like silver bells. But something was always missing. One princess grew angry when her tea was too hot. Another stepped carelessly over a wounded bird on the road. Yet another spoke harshly to the servants who served her. None of them, the prince felt in his heart, could truly feel the small sorrows or tiny joys of the world as a real princess should. Heart sore and weary, he returned home just as autumn painted the leaves gold and crimson. The castle welcomed him with roaring fires and warm, spiced wine, but the prince's smile remained faint. Then came the night that changed everything. A ferocious storm rolled in from the north. Thunder cracked like breaking mountains, lightning turned night into day, and rain fell in silver sheets so thick that the world seemed drowned. Just as the great clock in the tower struck midnight, a timid but determined knock echoed through the heavy oak doors. The old king, wrapped in his fur-lined robe, hurried to the gate himself. There stood a young woman, utterly drenched. Her cloak was sodden and heavy, her golden hair plastered against her pale cheeks, and her delicate silk slippers were ruined. Yet she curtsied gracefully, despite the water pooling around her feet. "Your Majesty," she said in a voice soft but steady, "I am a princess, lost in this terrible storm. I beg shelter for the night." The king, moved by her dignity even in such a state, welcomed her instantly. Servants bustled about with towels, warm broth, and dry gowns of finest linen. She thanked each one personally, her voice gentle and sincere. The queen, however sharp-eyed and clever, watched silently from the shadows. When the guest had been led away to change, the queen whispered to the servants, "Prepare the guest chamber, but first, bring me a single pea." That night, while the storm raged outside, the queen carried out her famous test. She placed one small, hard, perfectly round green pea on the bare wooden bed frame. Then, with the help of the maids, she stacked 20 of the softest goose feather mattresses on top, one by one, until they formed a mountain so high that a ladder was needed to reach the top. Over the mattresses went 20 eiderdown quilts, each stuffed with the down of white swans, so light and thick that an ordinary person would feel as though they were floating on clouds. The young princess climbed carefully up the ladder, thanked everyone once more, and lay down. The next morning, the sky was clear and blue, birds sang, and sunlight poured through the tall windows. Everyone gathered in the sunlit hall. The princess descended the grand staircase slowly, rubbing her eyes. Dark circles shadowed her delicate face. She looked exhausted. The queen approached with a gentle smile. "My dear child, how did you sleep?" The princess shook her head, almost laughing through her weariness. "Terribly, Your Majesty. There is something in that bed, something small and impossibly hard. I felt it all night long. Every time I moved, it seemed to move with me. My back aches, my shoulders ache, even my poor toes are bruised. I fear I did not close my eyes for more than a moment." The queen's eyes sparkled. The king nodded slowly, and Prince Elias, his heart suddenly racing, stepped forward. Only a true princess could feel a single pea beneath 20 feather mattresses and 20 eiderdown quilts. No one else would notice such a tiny thing. No one else would care. The prince took her hand gently, reverently. "I have searched the wide world for you," he said. "Will you stay with me, not as a guest, but as my wife and my equal?" The princess looked into his eyes and saw kindness, honesty, and a quiet joy that matched her own. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes, I will." The wedding was the most splendid the kingdom had ever seen. Roses bloomed in winter, lanterns floated above the castle like stars, and musicians played until dawn. The princess wore a gown of moonlight silk embroidered with tiny pearls, and the prince could not stop smiling. Years later, they ruled together with fairness and grace. They listened to the worries of farmers and the dreams of children alike. And whenever someone in the kingdom felt overlooked or hurt by something small that others ignored, the royal couple would smile knowingly. Because they remembered, sometimes the smallest things, a single pea, a kind word, a moment of empathy, are the truest proof of a noble heart. The pea itself? It was placed on a velvet cushion inside a crystal case and displayed in the Royal Museum. Children still come to see it, wide-eyed, and whisper, "Do you think she really felt it?" And the guide always answers with a wink, "Oh yes, a true princess always does." And they all lived truly, deeply, happily ever after. And so, the prince learned that truth reveals itself in the smallest details, and that real worth lies not in crowns or fine clothes, but in sincerity and sensitivity of heart. If you enjoyed this story, subscribe, turn on the notification bell, and let us know in the comments which classic fairy tale you would like to hear next. Until our next story, may honesty guide you, and may fairy tales keep magic alive.